Boosting down with Great American Conference Commissioner Will Prewitt in the light of the news today, coming down from the league office, that it will reduce the regular season football schedule by one game, and the regular season basketball season will now be limited to just 22 conference games. Will, first of all, thanks for joining us here for OBU, because I know that you've been very, very busy with this COVID-19 thing, and then, of course, trying to get schedules reset. But how's things in the office besides a little hectic?
Todd, it's amazing. I had no idea what was going to be in store when everything shut down back on March 13th. And who knew that the place that the world would change? It's funny, we just got done talking about the Thunder a little bit, but literally the world changed one night. Thunder and Jazz can't play basketball. The world goes sideways. I really had no idea what to expect. I didn't know it was going to be this hectic, but I've got a great staff that I work with. Audrey Keedy, Eric Moyer done a great job trying to keep things going on their end for what they do for the conference. And I really appreciate the people that I work with at the 12 institutions. People don't always agree about everything, but we've got a group that does a really good job in trying to find some common ground and work together. And I'm blessed with the people that I work with, because I know that there are other folks that are trying to adjust everything on the fly that are having a lot more difficult time than we're having.
All right, Will, I want to ask you something specific to Oklahoma Baptist, and then we're going to get into a breakdown of the schedule and how everything was formatted. But I know people on Bison Hill today are not real happy because the schedule has been reduced down to 10 games, and they lose their marquee home game with a chance to maybe knock off the three-time defending league champion Ouachita. Can you tell us why the Ouachita game was the one that was selected out of 6 to be moved out of Shawnee?
Sure, Todd. And I understand how people feel about that, and it's definitely understandable. Really, it was not a case of choosing a game to take out of Shawnee, or it was really a new schedule done from scratch with 6 different travel partners. Obviously, OBU in what I usually call the Oklahoma City group with SNU. You have the Western Oklahoma group with Northwestern, Southwestern. You have the Southeastern Central group with ECU and Southeastern, Ouachita and Henderson, then UAM, SAU, Tech, Harding. So the schedule, when it was done before, the travel pairings were a little bit different, but there was a high priority placed on trying to make sure schools played all 5 of their in-state opponents. And from that point, okay, these schools, we're going to try to separate Northwestern, Southwestern from UAM, SAU. We're going to try to make sure that schools like ECU or Southeastern, make sure that they play Henderson State and Ouachita Baptist, because those games are a drivable game. So we made the schedule with the anticipation that there was a pretty high shot that it could be a 9-game schedule. So when we went back to the 9-game schedule, when you went through, every school would miss 2 travel partner games. So when we went back in and added a 10th game to the schedule after our athletic administrators decided that they wanted to make sure everyone got 5 home games. Originally, if we'd just played a 9-game schedule, OBU would have missed playing Henderson and Ouachita. When we added the 10th game back in, those were the only 2 Arkansas schools that OBU had not played, and we paired those schools together that were left by, if a school had 5 home games, they traveled to the school that only had 4 home games. Oklahoma Baptist had 5 home games. Ouachita had 4 home games. And so that's sort of how that travel partner pairing worked out.
Okay, Will, I know there's no perfect way to do this, but in protecting in-state games, and I understand why that's done because of travel budgets and stuff, and that's a real concern during this time, is to reduce the amount of money spent on athletics during a tough time. But do you not risk a little bit of an uncompetitive balance? And I'll give you the reason why. I was looking at the schedule today. Of the top 5 last year, Harding will play 3 of those 4 at home. Washita will play 2 and go on the road for 2. Henderson State doesn't play OBU, but they get Washita and Henderson both at home. Or excuse me, Washita and Harding both at home. Only Southern Arkansas and OBU gets 1 of the other 4 on their home field. Does that not create a little bit of a schedule imbalance?
It can, but Todd, to be honest, and when we go through and do this, if you're in a Division I league, you look at trying to do the competitive balance. Todd, when I put this schedule together and when it was approved by our athletic administrators and CEOs, it was strictly on the travel and the dollars. And, I certainly get that. That's one of the things that I love about our schedule. I have a love-hate relationship with our normal football schedule. It's fun to see non-conference games. I would love to see as OBU grows as a program to possibly see OBU play UCO or a Pitt State or someone like that, or Harding playing good teams from the Gulf South, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing that I love about our conference schedule, and you don't see this in Division I because it is a huge concern. You look at the SEC schedule. Alabama doesn't have to play this team, or LSU doesn't have to play this team. I really ought to find a way to gig LSU with James on the call, but the thing that I love about the GAC schedule, it's 11 games. You go at it 11 straight weeks. Everybody plays everybody, so you get the true champion. And that was the one piece when the schedule reduced that I really hated. And Todd, we had a lot of discussions when we went, and I could bore your listeners to death with a ton of inside baseball on this, but going back and talking about some of the competitive balance, one of the things we talked about, if it had been a 9-game schedule, because schools would have missed 2 opponents, do we retain just having a conference champion? Would we have gone through and played divisional play for 1 year? Do you have a championship game if you go through divisional play? So, I certainly understand the frustration, but I mean, it was, and I know if I were an OBU fan, I wouldn't be crazy about this answer. It's unfortunately just the bad luck of the draw in geography, but I certainly get the concern about competitive balance.
Let me ask you this question. The schedule will not change next year. So does that mean the Bison will travel to Washita now for 3 straight years?
Say, Todd, next year is a new scheduling grid. So to be honest, I'm just trying to survive this week, this month, this year. So portions of the schedule next year would actually be different in home and home. There was a number of teams that would play home, would go back-to-back years because the schedule's done in 4-year segments. This year ends the 2017 through 2020 scheduling segment. Next year begins the 21 through 24 scheduling segment. And to try to work a number of things, we wanted to take care that we didn't put some of our rivalry games early in the year. We were just running things on a straight rotation. So we've taken care for the 21 through 24 schedule that we don't have a game like Washita Harding on week 1. We've wanted to take care that we've had schedules on both sides of the border where schools would play 4 in-state games to start the season. And, it feels a little bit lopsided when you play almost all of your rivalry games, before the fall even gets here with our schedule. So there's a lot of moving pieces that the 21 through 24 schedule is done off of a different framework than the current schedule. And Todd, to be honest, I haven't looked at it, but if that's how the schedule falls, it would certainly be unfortunate. But this year is kind of the outlier. But the goal is to make, within that 4-year scheduling cycle, every year you get 2 home games, or every cycle, 2 home games, 2 road games.
Will Prewitt, Conference Commissioner of the Great American Conference, visiting with us here. Will, take us into the decision to reduce the schedule just 1 game and not 2, because you said, you told me this earlier today, that there was a lot of talk about reducing it to 9 games. How did they ultimately settle on just reducing it by 1?
and this was a discussion that this was really the hot button topic at the national level as well as at the conference level. Most of our schedules across the board were somewhere between a 15 and 25% reduction. Basketball goes 26 to 22, baseball goes from 50 to 40, softball goes 56, 44, so on and so on. Well, if you keep football consistent with the numbers in other sports across the board, then you probably are looking at 2 games out of 11. That's 18%, and that's consistent with what's gone on with other sports across the board. There was a lot of concern about football. Is a little bit different than some of our other sports, and it's dangerous anytime you say that. But football is different, and I'm not saying necessarily from what it means to the competitors, what it means to fans, etc. But many times our football games, and keeping our fingers crossed that this is even a possibility in 2020, though, if you look at the 10 biggest dates that colleges or universities have prospective student athletes or just prospective students on their campuses, it's homecoming, it's family day, it's things that are often around your football schedule. So a lot of our communities felt like, one, for the colleges to get that 5th home game, but also for our communities. I mean, you think about the businesses, their corporate partners with OBU, if we're able to have fans, or even if it just means visiting teams coming and spending money in the community at restaurants, etc. So there was a lot of talk on why that needed to balance at 5 and 5 with 10 games. But also, Todd, football and cross country got a little bit less of a reduction nationally by percentage than everyone else because they have fewer competitions. It's really, I've used the analogy so much, it's apples and oranges. Sometimes when you deal with the percentages, if you're taking away 12 competitions from this sport or 4 competitions from this sport, and they've got a bigger percentage. But, if you take away 2 from a sport that is already limited to 11, at what point are you taking too much away from the student athletes? So all of those things balanced into the decision that was made nationally and then by our athletic administrators and presidents.
Okay, well, this might be a question that's better served for somebody higher up at the NCAA level than you, but since I have you here, I'm going to ask you. The NCAA champions itself about making it a great experience at the college level for student athletes. And again, I understand we're in different times. So with that in mind, I'm still going to ask you this question. How is it making an experience better for student athletes by taking games away?
And I'm really glad you asked that question because it's one that I like to give the answer on this one. It's not an answer that this is going to sound contradictory. I don't like this answer, but I like explaining how we got to it. Todd, you're seeing across college athletics, Division I programs are being cut left and right. In the Mid-American Conference, Akron cut 4 or 5 programs, Bowling Green's cut baseball. What we really looked at across Division I, and this went through survey data that came out. There was an initial survey done about 5 or 6 weeks ago by the Division II Commissioners Association as well as the Division II Athletic Directors, and then a separate survey done by the NCAA. And 85% of athletic directors at the 300 plus Division II schools across the country felt that they needed relief from the number of games that we play this year, the possible financial benefit. I don't want to say benefits, but the relief of possibly not playing as many baseball games, softball games, soccer, volleyball, name the sport. You're looking across the board, your average Division II institution, probably in their athletic departments, taking anywhere from a 10 to 25% budget cut. If we can find ways that we can protect the conference schedule, not take away the opportunities to compete for conference championships by greatly reducing numbers of conference games. If we can reduce a few non-conference games across the board, I mean, I hate to do it. Like I told you earlier today, Todd, I did not get into athletics to do conference calls and fill out surveys. You know, almost all of us got into this business because we love the games. It hurts to take away playing opportunities. But you know what hurts a lot worse than taking away playing opportunities? If we put our institutions in a spot that they feel that they have to, for be it postseason competition, that they're not put in a bad spot recruiting, that you have to play a full schedule in all those sports, and the only way to play that schedule is to suspend a tennis program or to drop a golf program or to eliminate a cross-country program. And in Division II, we've been really strong in saying that there were a couple of programs in Texas that made a few cuts before we got to the reductions. But by and large, I think in Division II, we'll go through that pain and sacrifice if it means that everybody still has a chance to compete.
Will Prewitt, the conference commissioner of the Great American Conference, is visiting with us. Will, I think it's fair to say that while we're sitting here talking about football, we're going to in basketball as well, set to start in November. There's no guarantees as we sit here and talk on May 29th that anything's going to happen right now, correct?
No, absolutely. I wish I could guarantee, but we're at the mercy of circumstance. Obviously, and it's really interesting to me that a lot of the media attention and various speculation about when will games begin, when will practices begin, that's not an NCAA decision. The decisions that really impact what happened in the Great American Conference this year are the ones made by Governor Stitt and the legislature in Oklahoma, by Governor Hutchinson and the legislature in Arkansas. The guidelines that they set forward for our institutions to play under. Thing that makes me feel pretty good is I think our two states are very much on the same page in what they're trying to do going forward. Todd, where the NCAA comes into play is what happens. We feel like we'll be able to play, or we're hoping. I mean, again, if there's a spike over the next couple of months, if who knows what could happen, but if circumstances remain as they are, the press release we sent out today, we plan on having 12 campuses open for on-campus learning. We're working to try to make it safe to be on campus, to work, to learn, and hopefully play sports. But what happens, we're good to go. The Lone Star Conference is good to go. The MIAA is good to go. The Gulf South is good to go. But what happens if the 3 West Coast leagues can't play? The 3 Northeast leagues can't play? Possibly the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Conference in Michigan, they're not able to play. There's 23 Division II conferences. There's, I believe it's 306 member schools. What's the number that we put everything on hold and push championships back and push our seasons back? And the question beyond that is, if those people aren't ready, do we continue our play, and maybe there's just some form of regional championships that we're able to do in the fall when we can play, and those folks do championships if they're able to play everything in the spring. I've never been a part of something where you do so many plans and you hope that plans are never going to be used or see the light of day. But the Division II Commissioners Association is working on developing a plan in case we have to compete in every sport in the spring. I can see our athletic trainers, our athletic communicators, you're putting those folks in an incredibly difficult spot. But do you do what you have to do within reason to try to give people a chance to compete? So, Todd, you're right. There's no guarantees. But right now, we've got a schedule out saying East Central and Henderson State are going to play football on Thursday, September 10th. We've got 5 other games scheduled for Saturday the 12th. A couple of those may move to Thursday. Right now, we're planning on working like we're going to play those football games on that night. I think we conceivably could have some volleyball and soccer start a tiny bit ahead of that with because they will have some limited non-conference opportunity. Volleyball, 20 dates, 16 of which are in conference. Women's soccer has 2 non-conference dates that they'll be able to play. But Todd, we've got plans to play. It's time to roll up our sleeves and figure out how we're going to do it. I really looked at this as being and I feel I'm being overly simplistic with some of these dates. By June 1st, we're going to adjust our schedules. We're going to adjust our championships. So that gets us to the start line. Now we've got June, the first part of July. By July 1, we need to be pretty well down the road with our health and safety people, with some of the other concerns on, maybe a common start date to GAC practices for football, for having policies. How do we handle if a school can't play games because for medical reasons? Do we have to put some sort of minimum standards in as far as contests played to be eligible for postseason tournaments? We need to have all those things done by July 15th, preferably a little bit earlier. In this world that we live in right now, I really hate being in a situation where you react to things. I love when we're able to do things as a conference, as administrators, just in everyday life. We've got these things done, we're ahead of the game. But right now, everything is, I think once we get to that point in, between July 1st and July 15th, it's going to be react, refine, because again, circumstances, it's amazing to just think about how much has the paradigm of the world changed since we saw each other last in person in Bartlesville. Yeah. So, it's constant react, refine, make all of those things work. We're doing that through July. We get to August 1, and hopefully we've got the green light. We're going to put all of these things in place. We're going to start practice and then play games at some point.
Okay, I don't know if this is a league issue. I don't know this, and it probably is more towards a league than the NCAA. Or maybe it's just an individual institution thing, but social distancing among fans at sporting events. I know it's not as big a deal, Will, at the Division II level it is at Division I. But the Great American Conference has pretty good attendance. In fact, you tweeted out today that they were 6th in overall attendance in Division II schools, and that's out of 16 leagues. So does that come from you? Do you work in concert with individual schools or collectively with the membership body?
Todd, it's funny. That came up yesterday in my conversation with the presidents, and the answer is I think we'll work together on this, but I think the ultimate answer is one of those none of the above. Really, the ultimate answer to that will lie with the health department and public health folks in Little Rock and Oklahoma City. That they'll set guidelines that that you can probably only have so many people in this space. I would imagine that we'll be in a very similar spot to high school athletics across the 2 states with other NAI football programs like Langston or Panhandle, and really even what you see in Stillwater, Norman, or Fayetteville. And I think we'll get some sort of guideline saying you have to have so much separation, and from there we'll go to see what that number is. But we will have to work together on if the numbers say that you can get this many people in your facility, how many people does the visiting school get to bring? We're going to have to work together on things like that. Todd, some places are going to be much easier to make some of these things work. You think of facility like Henderson or Washita, where there's a very large visitor section. You know, and ECU has a pretty good sized one. But you look at some of our other places. You know, it's really difficult for the places where there's only like one or two sections of visitors bleachers. And hey, maybe your old friends in Alva have figured it out the whole time. Maybe we can figure out a way to have drive-in football like they do at Northwestern.
That's great. Yeah, they're very much ahead of the curve up there. Last question. You and I had talked about this today, but I still want to address it. Was there any options on the table to reduce the league basketball schedule from playing a double round robin to allow some non-conference games to take place?
No, and it's something that in theory makes sense. That sorry about that. Just
That's all right.
Just say it's almost a tradition now to have my daughter Zoom bomb me.
Well, if it wasn't her, it could have been my dog. So,
but you know, Todd, in theory, it's one of those. You know, it would make sense conceivably if you could have an OBU play UCO or Southern Nazarene play Oklahoma Christian or Monticello play Delta State. But from where everyone has really prioritized their conference schedules and trying to keep the legitimacy of those conference championships, we're retaining the full 22 games. The MIAA, they're planning on playing 22 conference basketball games. The Lone Star, 22 conference basketball games. So even had we reduced, I think you would have to go back and play the full 22 because you couldn't just make that change in a vacuum. I think it would have required some across the board changes. You know, yeah, I think you could do something like that if you got creative. You'd have to figure out how to handle your postseasons, but you know, conceivably where our footprint overlaps a lot with the MIAA, you figure out a way that, you know, an Oklahoma Christian or UCO could play against some of the nearby schools. You know, Missouri Southern possibly could play in Arkansas Tech and Harding, some people close by. But basically at the end of the day, everyone said, if we've got 22 games, we're going to try to prioritize our conference schedule and make that as legitimate of a conference championship as possible.
Man, we could sit and talk for days, but I do appreciate your candor. I do appreciate you coming on, my friend. Looking forward to seeing you in person and not on the other side of a computer screen. Thanks again, Will.
Thanks, Todd.
Great American Conference Commissioner Will Prewitt.